Hello, learning nerds, and welcome on in to the nerdiest podcast you're going to hear today. My name is Dr. Luke Hobson. I am your host. I'm a senior instructional designer, a program manager, author, blogger, podcaster, and instructor. My passion is instructional design, and I consider it my purpose to be able to help you along your own instructional design journey. And all are welcome on into the show, whether you are a newbie or you've been doing this for years and you're looking to learn about a couple of different types of tips and techniques that can help you out inside of your career right now. All are welcome on in. And you can find more about this show over at drlukehobson.com. Folks, a quick announcement. I'm releasing a new kind of free ebook. It's not an ebook. It's actually going to be in a blog, but it pretty much is shaping up to be a book. I am releasing a new kind of book that will be featured on drlukehobson.com coming out on Tuesday, Amazon Prime Day. And what is this book about that you might be asking? Well, the number one question, without a doubt, that all of you ask me about is, how do I become an instructional designer? And then you share with me all of your stories and your backgrounds and your educations. And while I love hearing from you and trying to be able to help all of you out, I knew there had to be a better way out there instead of just trying to be able to send you over to one resource or another one. And then the new video pops out, so I send you over to this one. And instead, I was like, you know what? What if I just make this super blog post about everything I can think of to try to help you to become an instructional designer? So that's coming out pretty soon on July 11th. Inside of there, I talk about pretty much everything pertaining to how to actually study, but different forms of techniques and methodologies, how to form different types of habits, how to make all of that effective. We also dive in quite a bit into a number of different types of resources, from blogs, podcasts, YouTube channels, books, courses, certificate programs, degrees, trainings, communities. We also talk about networking, masterminds, a whole bunch of things as far as for that to help to be able to give you some more direction and clarity about where to go and what to look into. And also been talking about instructional design topics pertaining to andragogy and learning sciences, and talking about instructional design models and theories and frameworks, and talking about with UDL and DEI and accessibility, project management, working with SMEs, many other things. So I'm going to be releasing this soon. Right now, it's like 80 pages or so, give or take. I'm clearly scratching the surface on many of these topics because without a doubt, this could be like a 10,000 page book. I have a lot of recommendations inside of here about where to go to learn more about every single topic that I am going to be mentioning about. But be on the lookout. That will be coming out soon. If you have not yet already done so, I'd recommend to sign up for my mailing list at drlukehobson.com. That's going to be the easiest way for me to be able to get that information out there. But if you want to be able to learn a little bit more, I just made a posting about that on LinkedIn the other day. So be sure to check that out. And I really hope that all of this information is going to help you along your instructional design journey by trying to put everything in one place, so that way you can bookmark it, you can save it, you can go back to it later on. And then, yeah, here's hoping that that's going to help you all out. Oh, and I should probably mention the name of the blog, by the way. Yeah, Luke, that'd be good for marketing purposes. You know, it is going to be called So You Want to Become an Instructional Designer. So maybe in the future, you can just Google it and it will pop up. So, hey, here's hoping. But today, let's talk about our guest, because this is going to be a very special episode. Today, we are going to be chatting with Amanda Vaughn. Amanda is a former teacher who became a corporate instructional designer, and she actually is the first student from Instructional Design Institute to come on the show and just to talk more with us about everything for her journey. I asked her to come on the show really for two different reasons. The first is that the more real-life examples I can share with you about how a teacher became an instructional designer, the better. Amanda also did everything, in my opinion, with the right way of trying to be able to update everything with planning things out correctly. And we talk more about with updating things from resumes to portfolios to cover letters to trying to be able to focus on professional development, talking about all of those things. And she even talks about networking, interviewing. So all of these amazing tips are going to be coming from her. And that's why I want her to be able to share her story. The second reason, though, which doesn't get highlighted enough nowadays, is when you become an instructional designer, well, then what? What do you do. There is this type of a assumption, I would say, that when you become an instructional designer, that everything is going to be paved out perfectly for you. The road is very clear. You're going to be all set. And it's not always the case. You get the job and you're like, great, I'm here. This is what I wanted. How do I do this job? What do I need to look out for? What should I be working on? How do I train myself in a different way? Because every job comes with their own type of support system, team structure, guidance, and whatnot. So we also talk about that too, which is very, very important nowadays to be able to talk more about once you do get the job. Well, what are you going to do next? So I am not going to take up any more time. Here is the one and the only Amanda Vaughn. Amanda, welcome to the podcast.
Hello, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic. I am well. Well, thank you for being here. But before we go in any further, Amanda, I'd love to hear more about everything with your journey. Can you just please introduce yourself to the audience? Tell us a little bit more about who you are and what it is that you do.
Okay, I'm Amanda, and I came from the education world. I taught for 15 years, everything from pre-K to fourth grade. And I decided it was time for a change, and so I am now in the instructional design world, in the corporate, also in the corporate world. So it's been a big change, but a good one.
Well, I kind of want to start off by saying, like, thank you for your service, because like 15 years is a long time.
It's a long time.
That's a long time. So I know that many folks who are listening to this episode right now can certainly relate with you. I know that there are many folks who are teachers or former teachers who are now going into this instructional design space or have been there for quite some time. But take me back for a second. What made you want to become a teacher? What made you want to stay at one place for 15 years? Why'd you want to do that in the first place?
Well, you make a hard decision when you're 18 years old, what you want to do for the rest of your life. And my mom worked as a secretary at a school, so I was always around the school setting, and I had some amazing teachers growing up, and it was just something I've always wanted to do. I'd play school when I was little, and it never went away. And so I had a lot of good people in my life that just attracted me. So yeah, it was something I've always wanted to do ever since I was little.
So then walk me through this process, because you've been at this place for 15 years. You said you taught in many different subject matters and for age groups and everything. What was the moment that finally made you say, okay, maybe it's time for me to make this career change now?
Well, I'm not going to lie. COVID had a little to do with that. It was tough coming back from the COVID years. It was really tough. Education pretty much changed at that point. And I've taught everything I can under my certificate. And I felt like I kind of fulfilled myself with what I have done with my degree. And I was just ready for something new and to pursue something more for myself, if anything.
Now, did your courses go online during that time frame with everything for remote learning and whatnot?
We did. During the first 2020, in March 2020, yes, we went remote, and that was a very big learning curve for us teachers, as well as the students. And then the following year, we did go remote as well, but it was an option. So I was an in-person teacher, but we did do some activities and online lessons for those remote learners. So the kiddos had an option of remote or in-person, and we just kind of made it work for both sets of students. So that was when teaching got really hard, when we were trying to do in-person and online learning, and it just became so overwhelming and a lot of work.
Yeah, because I often say, and why I asked you is because I usually don't call that portion of what many teachers went through online learning, because it was technically, but that was really emergency learning. That whole concept where you're on the fly of, I've never had to do this before, I've never had to teach in this capacity before, and I'm expected to also build and design my course at the same time and hope everything looks great. It's a lot to do.
And it was no learning. It was, like you said, it was immediately we went into online learning, which we have never done before. I mean, granted, luckily at that time I was teaching second grade. At that time we were using Google Classroom, and so the kids were aware of like how to log into some of those programs, but nothing to the capacity that would have been more beneficial to them in the end. Hindsight 2020, like what we know now is way different what we knew then.
Oh yeah, of course, of course. So then with that entire journey, so now you're realizing that, all right, I think it's time for a change here. How did you actually hear about instructional design then? Where did that get introduced into your world?
So kind of funny, I really had no idea about instructional design, and I, going out looking for a position. I actually work at the utility company my husband works at, so I kind of knew where to go as far as looking for a job in that aspect. But knowing the description of the jobs were so hard to understand coming from the education world, because when you're a teacher, you're a teacher. That's what you're doing. You know what you're getting into. Whereas my position was considered an analyst, and I was like, an analyst of talent development. And so it was just kind of like, what is that? And so really reading into those descriptions and understanding what you're going to do, and then reaching out and talking to others in that same kind of area was very beneficial as well, to kind of understand and know what that position involved. And it kind of helped too that on the description, it did say like a preferred teacher certification, more adult learning, but it did also have the education. So I was like, ooh, like this is something I could do, So it made me feel good that I was like, okay, there is things out there.
Yeah, well, that's also really great to hear too, because there are some posts I've seen on LinkedIn that literally say like, "Don't apply if you're a teacher," and I'm like, yes. What? Okay, that's a little bit interesting. But what was attractive about instructional design? Because I've always wanted to be an instructional designer. I'm one of like the very few oddballs of the planet where I'm like, oh, design learning experiences for a job. Can't believe someone pays me to do this. Like, that's what I want to be able to do. But as your story and many, many, many others, they're like, didn't know instructional design, what was a thing? Like, what was attractive about this job to you in the first place?
I think for me, it felt like I could use my degree in a sense that it's not that I couldn't design a curriculum, but I've done it before. Not necessarily designing it, but I've produced curriculum. I've taught it, and it just felt like it was something that was a comfort zone for me, to where I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, this is something that I can work with. Like, it's something I'm not too scared of, something I'm aware of, like how people learn. Of course, teaching children and teaching adults is a little different. But just knowing those teaching styles and how to incorporate that into your programs that you're building.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. So walk me through your steps. You saw a job posting, you have a connection at the organization, clearly. Beneficial when you're married to someone who is connected at the organization. A very helpful tip for those listening at home. But what were your steps to actually go and to do this, to become an instructional designer? Like, did you think more about updating your resume, portfolio, website, attend workshops? Like, what were the steps to try to actually go and do this?
Definitely the resume. I did have to go in and really look at my resume and not necessarily focus on the grade levels I taught, but like what those skills were what those skills I had within teaching, and really highlight those to make that stand out, that, I am more than just a teacher. I can do things outside of just that teaching realm. And, just really updating. Unfortunately, like I said, I didn't really know much about instructional design before I came into my role, but definitely taking classes like your Instructional Design Institute would be very beneficial for somebody going into this kind of role.
Well, I thank you for the free plug there. I did not tell you to say that. So thank you for sharing and talking about that. I do want to ask a follow-up question, because you talked about different types of skills that you recognize for what you were currently doing as a teacher and how they kind of applied into that different area of instructional design. What were some of those skills that did stick out to you?
I think the biggest skill that teachers have is that you're very structured, you're very organized, and you're able to apply how people learn into what you're doing. So I think those are big skills that I think can take you anywhere, not just into instructional design, just really anywhere. And those people skills, we're dealing with students, administrators, other teachers, kiddos. I mean, or not just students, parents. And so you're having to work with a lot of other people. So I kind of feel that gives you good people skills as well.
Now, for a lot of people out there, they're trying to think about their skills. It's pretty hard to do when you're under a lot of stress. You got a lot of things going on. As you mentioned, you were dealing with the pandemic and trying to be able to do all that. How did you stay in that right headspace to still think clearly enough of, oh, that was my skill, and oh, I did do this parent-teacher conference, so I learned about relationship management, and I do how did you stay organized like that to be able to be reflective upon your own skill set?
I think because it's something you do every day. It's something that you're having to handle every single day and working with those relationships for everybody. Like I said, the administration, students, parents. And it's just something that you do every day, but it's really something that's very beneficial. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, like I'm always so impressed with folks who are able that, like, when they're in their maximum burnout, and they're just done and they're still trying to apply to jobs. And like, because it really is like a second full-time job to apply to a job. Trying to update your resume, attend classes, do everything, while obviously beneficial, it's really tough to be able to do. So
Agreed.
So it's always so amazing to be able to hear that people can think and still be able to stay organized and on top of everything. And of course, teachers have superpowers. I'm convinced of that. So it makes a lot of sense to me that folks can actually handle this. Was there one part as you got into this new instructional design position, was there any type of skill that you recognized later on of like, oh, wow, my teaching background really helped me in this area that maybe we don't talk about that as much within like the instructional design space?
As far as helping me, I guess just being comfortable in understanding how people learn. I think I would have more of like where I found where I struggled more than what helped me. I think I struggled more in the sense that, teachers are the SMEs. They're the ones that go out there and they're the subject matter experts, whereas in the instructional design world, you're going to those SMEs and kind of working with them. And let me back up. I think the hardest part for me was putting it on paper. It's all in your head. Like, you can do a lesson, you can produce everything, but to put it on paper and have it laid out for the instructional design process is kind of where I struggled. I know I didn't answer that question very well.
No,
like, what was harder than what was easier for me, but
yeah.
I guess I could. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I could say what was easy for me is just working with the team that I'm working with and the collaboration, because with education, that's something you're always collaborating with your team members and other grade levels, and just that collaboration. And to me, that was very, very helpful.
I think that surprised me the most when I first became an instructional designer was how often I did not work with just myself. You were never just by yourself. You're always with the team members. You're always talking with stakeholders, SMEs, but even with like the engineering team to make sure that the platform is functioning properly, and customer support to make sure that they're answering the questions of the employees or the students or the whoever. There's so much communication that is involved in the back end that I really hope that people from hearing from your story are learning, but that is like, it's crucial. I was never alone. Yeah, my desk. There was always some meeting. There was always something which I was like, yeah, my job consists of me being in meetings from 9 to 5. It's what I do. Somewhere I design things, but like when I was first starting off, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm just going from conference to conference. And then eventually during remote times, like, I'm just going from Zoom room to Zoom room because there's just so much communication. Did you have any other surprises that when you first became an instructional designer, but you were like, oh, I didn't expect my job to also involve X? Was there anything like that?
Not really. I think for me, the biggest surprise, and it's not really necessarily the job itself, it was the the ability to go to the bathroom when I want and like not have to tell somebody, hey, I'm going to go to the bathroom. Like, can you watch my cubicle? Like, it was pretty much, I think that one took me back. That was one of my biggest surprises and something I had to adjust to. Like, oh, I can have a lunch break where I'm like on my own and it's quiet. So those are big surprises to me. But as far as anything within the position, I really didn't have any expectation of what to expect, and I just kind of went in and was like, okay, what do you need me to do? So I didn't really go in saying, okay, I'm only going to do this. I pretty much, whatever came at me, I was more than willing to help with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yes, shocking turn of events. You can be an adult and
Yes.
not need to ask for permission to do things. And but of course, understandably so, it is very different when you have 30 kiddos who are inside of a room and then you leave. It's not the same.
It cannot be unattended.
Right. Yeah. That's usually not the same thing as far as for that goes. So I'd love now to dive a little bit more into being able to share some advice with fellow teachers who are currently listening right now, who want to be able to replicate your steps, do exactly what you did, get to that whole instructional design promised land. What advice would you give to a teacher as far as for first steps with trying to be able to make this change?
I think the very first step is wanting to do it and not being scared to do it. I think a lot of teachers are really worried about, I can't leave my contract, I can't, I'm stuck. And just understanding that you're not stuck. There is other options out there for you if that's something, the route you want to go. And just be confident in yourself and your skills and let that be known. Just put yourself out there and work on that resume. Get that resume top notch. And again, don't follow just, okay, I'm a teacher, I taught this grade. Really go into those skills that, I communicate with parents daily. I communicate by email, by phone calls, and kind of explain how you do those. And everything from, I lost my train of thought for a second. Just really those skills that you have. Oh gosh, I'm on it.
No, it's fine. So would it be something as in like people are being able to right now do like a live journal of sorts of being able to like take notes as they go and being able to think about things that are happening in real time and writing them down? Would that be like a good first step?
Absolutely. Like creating pros and cons. Like if I were to stay or if I were to go, what are those pros and cons going to look like? If I get a different job, what's that going to look like? And I guess for me, my deciding factor was my kids were already past the elementary age level. And so it really kind of gave me that push, like, I've been there for them during their elementary time. Now it's time to branch out and like pursue something else and see what else is out there. So yeah, don't hold yourself where you think you have to be. There is other options available for you.
And I love the pros and cons lists, by the way. I mentioned that actually in my book because it very much felt like trying to be able to go and transition into a new job almost felt like when I'm trying to be able to go and to buy a new home in like a different area. I've never lived in a city before. Like, I'm like, what are the pros and cons of that? Thinking about with commuter time. And then, of course, like our kids are going to have to change the school. Then, things of that nature. And just being able to have a visual in front of me to be able to say that, okay, that works. Or like, oh, that's kind of a big deal. Maybe I need to reconsider, whatever. That's what definitely helped me for making many different like life-changing decisions. It is that visual pros and cons list.
And I will say it wasn't an easy decision. It was a very hard decision, and I left midway through the school year, so that was even harder to really go, okay, is this really, like, am I making the right decision? But in the end, 100%, I know I made the right decision.
And that's a very resounding answer I hear from most teachers is that it was super hard to do, but I'm so glad I did it now because I have these freedoms and flexibilities and whatnot. So, which also makes me feel sad for our society as a whole, which is a whole nother topic for another day of like, we need to do more to support our teachers. So it's definitely a bit crazy, a bit nervous there for society in general, but that also you need to take care of yourself. You need to gotta do what's right for you and your family and everything. So
Absolutely.
priorities there. So it definitely makes sense. Well, I would love to be selfish for a second, because you are a part of the first cohort graduating from Instructional Design Institute, which you just did the other day. So congratulations, woohoo! Which is crazy, of a 7-week long intense instructional design program. So once again, you and all of your classmates just did fantastic. I am just so amazed at all of your abilities and growth, and this has been amazing to see. But I would love to know more. What made you apply to Instructional Design Institute in the first place? Because you sent me an email, and when I read this email, I'm like, I need to figure out how to carefully respond to this, because you said this was your first online course before.
Yes.
Where that is, I will say, that is very unusual as someone who has taken online courses since he was a kid in college. I've always taken online courses. So this was your first online course in 2023. What made you want to apply to an online instructional design program?
Well, my manager had a big say-so in it. To be honest, so he just wanted me to get out there and kind of learn a little bit more about the instructional design world, because obviously I was coming in with not a lot of knowledge of it. So he found your course, thought it was going to be amazing. So we signed me up, and yes, it was my first online course, official, real course. And it was a little overwhelming at first, because I'm very old school. I think when I was in college, online courses were kind of a thing, but it was so new that it was just nobody really did it, and you have to be very self-disciplined, and I don't think at that age I was. So it was not the best option for me. So yeah, it was a little overwhelming at first, but really once I got into your class and we started developing our own class, I really understood the flow, and it just kind of helped me create that project that we worked on. And it was an amazing experience. But yes, at first it was a little overwhelming coming in.
Of course, yeah. Because I remember trying to be able to, because I sent a follow-up email, and you're like, how do online courses work? I'm like, she's going to be in for a shock when she goes into the course. So trying to explain about that. But yes, I mean, the first online course that I've ever took, and I've mentioned this before, the course was in Blackboard. It was neon green and pink. The navigation was up to the instructor, who was just woo, and just went crazy with the colors. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, I physically can't look at my screen for longer than an hour. My eyes are just bugging out in my head. And of course, there was no rhyme or reason for online courses back then. There was no quality assurance. There was no training. There was no. I'm convinced that people just did what they want. Some of my friends in higher ed called it the Wild West back in the day. So people just did what they want. And you're like, yeah, kind of a thing. So I'm very happy that you at least had a good example of what online courses should look like, as well as too from your colleagues who were able to go and to share their course project, as you were talking about with everything, and I loved your example too, with being able to think about a course for helping folks being able for teen driving preparation. I was thinking too about how when I took driver's ed as a teenager, there was no prep. There was no, they just threw me into a course, and I had the driver's ed teacher just slam on the brake being like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm just trying here. So I love the topic that you picked.
Thank you. It was just something I came up with because I am in the middle of doing it with my daughter. We do an at-home online drive, or not an online, but an at-home driving course. And so I was like, you know what? This would have been helpful for a kiddo coming in, or even an adult that's never driven before, and just really kind of give them the pieces that will help build them into that course. So that's kind of where it was. It was that introductory.
Yeah, it makes sense. It makes sense. And you're absolutely right. It's not just kids. We have plenty of people who are moving into this country who are trying to be able to do that for the very first time. Some people who haven't driven in forever, and they now need a license. And yeah, it's terrifying. It's like, yeah, it's not an easy thing to do. So it's just, it's absolutely crazy. So building a learning experience around that to be able to help folks out with learning about driving from all ages definitely makes sense. So it was an awesome idea to be able to see what you really did from the start to the finish and how it all worked. It was just so cool to be able to see. But now that you have officially graduated and you reached the end of 7 weeks, is there anything else that I can help you with as far as for questions? I'd love to just kind of open up the floor if there's anything else that you have questions about or what you are thinking about in the future. I'd just love to be able to help out if I still can. Or if you don't need me, that's fine. Maybe you're good.
I'm sure I will. I mean,
Yeah.
I know you've given me some resources too during the class. And so, again, it's that connecting with people and being able to reach out. And I'm sure if there's a question, I can email you and be like, hey, what about this?
Oh, yeah.
Or can you point me in the correct direction? And so just that's where I think I don't have any questions now, but not to say that there won't be in the future. Because, we're learning every single day, or I'm learning every single day in this new role. And there's things that I come across. I'm like, oh, okay. And I can't think of an example at the moment, but like, I know there's times where I'm like, oh, okay, man, I need to really think about this and really going and finding and looking at things that will help me with that particular situation. So nothing yet, but I'm sure I will be in contact.
You've learned everything you need to know, all within 7 minutes.
I mean,
But I did really appreciate, and I want to say this too, I did appreciate your feedback as well, being able to say, can you provide more examples early on about what it should look like for a course? And I was like, oh, for sure. I can definitely do that because it definitely is a bit meta to think about you're taking a course about how to design a course. That is certainly a different topic. So being able to provide more examples for being able to show like what something should look like definitely is as feedback that I will 100% be implementing into the next run to provide some more examples, because there are, and certainly even within your cohort too, I was so shocked at the diverse amount of people that we had, from some people who are instructional designers for like 20 years and others who are just starting off. So being able to share their courses naturally looked very different. That some people have years of experience and others, they are also, and one of the things why I like about having folks from different backgrounds come in is because for the folks who have been doing this for so long, you get stuck in your own way of how you design things. And I know, but I did that for forever, where every single course I was just like, it must be a reading and a video and a discussion. And you have to do it only one way. And then over the time, no, you don't. And it was actually from newer designers that showed that to me of well, what about this? I'm like, oh, what about that? Yeah.
And I thought that was a really great part of the course, was really getting to see everybody else's projects. And like you said, you can really see the ones who have been doing this for a long time, and then, or maybe it's their first time and it looked fabulous. I would have thought they've been doing this for a long time. So it was really neat to see everybody else's and kind of go from theirs. And when you see something like, oh, they did this on theirs, oh, I can add that to mine. So it just kind of helped with adding things as well.
Right. And you saw Alex's yoga course, right?
Yes.
Is that the one you reviewed? Yes. Oh, that was so cool.
Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I know he's been doing this a long time.
Yeah, I'll have to bring him on the show as well, because he 100% crushed it. It was so cool to see that. And once again, and the different types of courses too that you all worked on. You were doing a driver's ed course, but then Alex did the yoga one. Maya did the baking at high altitudes course. Didn't know that was a thing. I've never heard of that. No, right? So that was so fun to be able to do. But Amanda, thank you for coming on the show, sharing your story, telling this more about, because once again, there are so many teachers out there who are trying to be able to do this and are not really sure what to do and where to begin. So I know, but your words of wisdom will 100% be able to help them out. The final question I have for you is, where can people go to learn more about you and everything else that you talked about today? Where can people find you?
So it's funny you say that. So coming from the education world, we never really had any kind of platform that we would just share. It was pretty much just within, the different schools and how you've met people. But in the corporate world, I've noticed LinkedIn is definitely the place to go. So if they want to reach out on there, Absolutely. That is a great way to connect with people and really see other options that are available. There's ways you can look up, you can type in what you're interested in, and it'll give you little options and you can reach out to people. So LinkedIn is a great resource. Definitely.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be sure to grab your LinkedIn profile from you afterwards, and I'll put that down below into the show notes so people can reach out to you afterwards and maybe discuss more about teaching and about this entire type of crazy journey. Well, Amanda, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Amanda, once again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your words of wisdom. I'm sure it is going to help out for all of the teachers who are listening into this show, trying to figure out next steps, as well as two of entry-level instructional designers, where you get the job and then what do you do exactly? So I hope that helped out folks who are all listening at home. If you want to be able to actually replicate some of Amanda's steps, where indeed she did enroll in the Instructional Design Institute, we did work together for 7 weeks. If that is of an interest of you at all, of course, you can go down below inside of the show notes, or you can just Google Instructional Design Institute and see more about what that's all about pertaining with coaching, community, and diving on into a number of important topics pertaining with andragogy, UDL, backward design, evaluating learning experiences, walking away with portfolio pieces, and all of that good stuff. If you have any questions about that, as always, you can reach out to me via email, LinkedIn, or anywhere else that I am available on social media. And a big thank you to all of you who recently reviewed the show on Apple Podcasts and left a 5-star rating. Really appreciate that. As last episode, I mentioned about how many of you listen to the show. The reviews don't really reflect that. So I wanted to be able to get that number to bump that up a bit more. So I saw a whole bunch of positive reviews come in over on Apple Podcasts. So thank you very much for doing that. And if you have not yet already left a positive review for the show and you have been enjoying everything, please feel free to leave a review, because that really does help with spreading the learning nerd message across all of the various podcast platforms. But by far, Apple is the biggest. But by all means, I'm not picky. Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever else you're listening to this podcast episode, I really, really appreciate your support for being here and for listening to all of these types of long form pieces of content. But hey, folks, that's really all I have for you. Stay tuned for the new type of free blog post book thing that is coming out on Tuesday, July 11th. But that is it. So, hey, as always, stay nerdy out there. Talk to you next time.